Yeah, wrestling needs Vince Russo. I was doing some thinking about this, and really, look, I know Vince Russo, says he doesn't want to come back to wrestling. He's done with wrestling. He's completely given up on that part of his life, and that's totally cool. If he never comes back, I mean, fair play to him, 100%. But what I want to talk about in this video is why wrestling needs him, but not... Okay, yes, he's in the title of the video, the thumbnail, Vince Russo, but really, I'm going to deviate away from just Vince Russo himself. But really, it's more so about what Vince Russo represents. Because Vince Russo with shackles on, okay? Not Vince Russo doing anything he wants like WCW 2000. But Vince Russo with shackles on, like Vince McMahon's shackles in the Attitude Era. Vince Russo and his mentality, his ideology towards wrestling and creating great television. That Russo mentality is what's so badly needed in wrestling today. Now, some of you might be saying, no, it's not. We don't need Russo. Russo's going to produce car crash, garbage television. I want my great matches. And 100%, if you think that, hats off to you. I'm not here to argue. If you hate Russo, you never want to see him, totally cool. Hats off to you. But really, as far as bringing back ratings, bringing back TV viewers, bringing back interest in a wrestling show over the course of 2 and hell, God forbid, 3 hours, okay? When it comes to that, Vince Russo and just the ideology he brings is what's needed, okay? Vince Russo, he brought an ideology. Now, I'll summarize this as briefly as I can. I've talked about this in videos, the Elite Heat podcast, my video about, the truth about weekly wrestling and whatnot, but really, what Russo did, his mentality, I'll sum up for you right now. Russo was all about making you as a viewer feel like you can't miss a moment of the show, which is something that WWE nowadays, and even AEW to a lesser extent, but WWE particularly on Raw and NXT don't have, because on Monday and Wednesday nights for WWE, really, you get this overwhelming sense of you can skip the full 3 hours or the full 2 hours and you're not going to miss a damn thing. You're going to miss that 2-3 hours of content and you can catch up on one YouTube segment of Alexa Bliss or The Fiend, or you can catch up on what Karrion Kross did. But really, that's about it. That's all you need to fill in on. Whereas when Vince Russo was running the shows, when wrestling had Russo, realistically, look, wrestling with Russo had this must-see feel to it. It was this feel and this aura that if you missed 5 minutes of content, you're going to miss something like big or important happening in the context of the show, which in turn was big and important in the context of the characters and the superstars, which in turn was big and important in the build towards the pay-per-view, which in turn was big and important as far as the product as a whole. Okay, that's what Vince Russo and his ideology did. That ideology, that mentality was fantastic for bringing in ratings, attention, views, relevancy, clout for pro wrestling. Now, as is usually the case, considering the pro wrestling audience nowadays, and the fact that most of those viewers, the mass majority of those viewers who Russo's writing catered to, the more so your casual crowd, your people who just want entertaining TV and entertaining content, by and large, those people aren't watching wrestling anymore, because they've been driven away by poor quality product, poor storylines, all this kind of stuff. And the people left watching and being a part of the wrestling community nowadays are people who don't care as much about the quality of the show, how the show flows over the 2 to 3 hours. People nowadays more so just care about seeing their favorite wrestler from the indies succeed on the main roster, or seeing the best wrestling matches and seeing the matches that'll go into their list for the top 25 matches of 2021. That's more so the mentality nowadays, because as I just said, the people who Russo catered towards have long since pissed off to either UFC, MMA, movies, anything. Those people are long gone because wrestling's just that unentertaining and bland. But with Vince Russo or someone of the Russo mentality writing the show, running the ship, wrestling would be in a much better place. Because if you can get someone who can perfectly balance creating compelling must-see television alongside the matches and having a healthy balance, because yes, having 2-3 hours of car crash television every week is not great for your product, for a wrestling show, it's not the best. And really, the Ruthless Aggression era was able to balance that great. Now, I know Russo wasn't really involved in the Ruthless Aggression era, but just in general, it was a balance between must-see, compelling, some car crash TV, alongside, good in-ring quality, good wrestlers, good superstars. So in that regard, Ruthless Aggression era was great for, all round. But I think as far as bringing back ratings, bringing back viewers, bringing back interest, and making wrestling cool again, because one thing I've said in a number of videos is really that pro wrestling, if you don't want wrestling to be more relevant, if you don't want wrestling to be more cool, if you don't want to seem less uncool for liking wrestling, I mean, hats off to you. You're basically in the absolute minority in that regard, because in my personal opinion, and the opinion of, I'd imagine, many of you watching this video, if you're watching wrestling, I mean, granted, you must love it or have some kind of passion for it in some regard, and I'd imagine that if you're in that situation, you'd want to be able or feel more willing and more proud to really voice that and express that. And with Vince Russo and that kind of mentality of, that kind of writer producing must-see, car crash type, compelling, entertaining television week in, week out, that would bring in viewers. That would bring in relevancy. Because everything they've been doing in the past 5 to 10 years, pushing family-friendly, pushing agendas, pushing these 10 to 15 to 20 minute matches, pushing wrestlers who are less charisma and entertainment based and more so in-ring based. All these kind of things have intertwined to make pro wrestling dry, bland. Pro wrestling on a mainstream WWE stage is at a point where, as I said in that sad truth about WWE TV video, they're at a point where when they write a show, when they make 2-3 hours of television, the first thought most of the time for these companies, and I mean, if it's not the first thought, then well, God, they're not doing a good job at showing otherwise, but the feeling you get when you watch these shows is that WWE are throwing whatever random crap and filler they can onto the USA Network for 2 to 3 hours on either Monday or Wednesday nights. They're throwing out whatever crap they feel like just to get the sponsorship money, the ad money, the network money from USA and all these sponsors. They're doing that for those reasons. They're not doing it to try and make wrestling great or make wrestling cool again. They're just doing it to throw out some content, to keep their WWE machine ticking over, to keep the wheels in motion. As CM Punk said in the pipe bomb, keep the wheel turning. The wrestlers and the people involved are just spokes on the wheel. The wheel's going to keep turning, and WWE producing monotonous week in, week out shows is just them moving over the wheel whatever way they can. But when you get Vince Russo into the company, when Russo or someone of that mentality comes in to save wrestling and save WWE, what the mentality becomes is, how can we get that wheel to turn as quickly as possible? Because when the wheel is moving at a snail's pace, if not the wheel's stuck as is, when the wheel's like that, no one cares about wrestling. Wrestling's not cool. Wrestling's not relevant. The wheel was stuck in the New Generation era. The wheel was jammed because it was so uncool, it was irrelevant. But then Russo and the Attitude Era and the push for more adult content and really car crash TV, that made the wheel turn and turn and turn to the point where the wheel was going 100 miles an hour. The wheel was going 100 miles an hour, 98, 99, 2000. The wheel was absolutely turning. And that was the best time for pro wrestling. That was the time pro wrestling was the most must-see. And whether you love Russo, you hate Russo, his ideology, his mentality is really what pro wrestling so badly needs. Because if you want pro wrestling to be great, relevant, genuinely fun again, and not just fun because, Pete Dunne's wrestling Kyle O'Reilly this week, it's going to be a great 20-minute match filled with the guys headbutting each other's collarbones. If you want wrestling to be great and cool and relevant to casual fans and relevant in the mainstream again, I know some people won't, but at the end of the day, I and many people want wrestling to be cool for everyone. So in that regard, Russo, the mentality he brings, really does do that. So I'm going to call the video there. I think you guys get the point. Vince Russo is badly needed, and even if it's not him because he's done with writing wrestling, and can't blame him for that, someone of that mentality, someone who wants car crash, must-see, compelling, entertaining TV, night-long storylines that progress characters, develop must-see, intriguing storylines, lead to pay-per-view matches with swerves and outcomes you don't expect, because that type of wrestling is the best type of wrestling. So yeah, if you enjoyed the video, like, comment, subscribe, and drill. See ya.